Hello and welcome to How to Learn a Language. Yeah, the name kind of says it all. I'm Lindsay from Lindsay Does Languages, and I'm here to help you learn languages better, any language, any level. On this podcast, you'll get jargon-free linguistics insights to level up your fluency, practical mindset tips to tackle those inevitable learning wobbles, personal language diaries where I share my own progress and honest experiences, and an exclusive peek behind the scenes of language life. My coaching program that helps people speak fearlessly and intuitively by taking control of your learning without pressure or one-size-fits-all cookie-cutter methods. If you're ready to break free from perfectionism and finally start speaking the language you want, you're in the right place. Want to get started right away? Head to lindsaydoeslanguages.com/free video for your on-demand video training. All right, let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to How to Learn a Language. Today, we're talking about why accent doesn't define your language ability, because I know that it can be a big reason that we hold ourselves back from speaking, why we feel that we're not good enough yet, why we talk ourselves down. No bueno. So we're going to talk a little about this because I have some strong feelings and opinions about accents and we need to chat. So first up, I do need to just acknowledge that I have kind of a weird relationship with accent because I never thought that I had one in English, right? When I was growing up, I had family across the UK, family from Scotland, Wales, Ireland, the northwest of England, and I lived sort of smack bang in the middle of England. Literally, there was a pub down the road called the Heart of England, right? So it was very much in the middle, and people on TV sounded more like me. And so I just felt like this was the default, right? It wasn't till I sort of, grew up a bit and learned about language and did an MA in applied linguistics and understood all of this stuff that actually, I know I do have an accent because we all do. And that's kind of part of the problem. Although we all do have accents, there are some that are perceived more broadly, shall we say, positively and more negatively than others. There is a lot of accent bias in the world already. Some of that bias is positive, some of it is negative. Think about, for example, how in society at large, we treat a French accent speaking English like, oh, how sexy, oh, la la, right? Versus an Indian accent where you might be, sorry, what? I don't understand. It's not right. It's not right. Your accent is your linguistic DNA. And that should be something that we can be proud of rather than worry about judgment. And I know, right? I'm not naive. I know that you and me changing the way that we think about accent is not going to change everyone's mind, is not going to stop the negative accent bias, the subtle, covert judgments, and even flat out racism in some cases. But it is a start. We have a responsibility as language learners to do our best not to contribute to that. And if we don't begin to shed that shame starting with ourselves, then we're just contributing to it and it's never going to disappear. So your accent is your linguistic DNA. And that's something that we want to own a little bit more than we sometimes do. The other thing about accent is that your accent code switches. Let me explain. I recently visited China and I noticed something weird, right? I dumbed down my Chinese. Now, my Chinese is not 10 out of 10, like C2 expert level Chinese. I always felt that Chinese was what I call like a go big or go home language, right? The internet kind of made me think that if I wasn't going to get mega fluent, then you just can't even touch it because it's for the very serious language learners who are going to go all the way. Honestly, nonsense. I hate that. And I don't feel that anymore. But I think I finally found out why I felt that Chinese was this go big or go home language. Basically, when people would speak to me or I would need to speak to them, I noticed that I was using overly simple, even sometimes grammatically wrong sentences that I knew were grammatically wrong. And I was hardly using any tones. And thus my accent was pretty much my own English accent. I became une baguette s'il vous plaît girl, right? Just in China. Now, at first, I was thinking, what am I doing? This must be a reflection of my ability in Chinese, I must still be really bad at Chinese. But that's not true. Because as time went on in China, I realized, well, I really enjoy reading signs, spotting characters, figuring out meaning, understanding what I'm seeing around me. I can write well, right? Digitally with a sort of pinyin keyboard, I can do pretty good to sort of pause and take time to compose my sentences. And I can speak better when I try, when I have no specific goal, compared to what often happens when you're visiting a country like this, is service-based conversations. And these were the conversations I was having in real life. And so it wasn't important in those scenarios for me to show off my level of Chinese, but rather the goal of those conversations was to get something out of it, to get the thing that I wanted out of it, whether that was directions or food or, whatever it might have been. There's a different goal. So I found myself adjusting my Chinese because it was like I didn't want them to think I was mega, mega fluent, because then I wouldn't understand their response to me. I wanted to sort of let them know, hey, I'm still a beginner in your language, but I'm trying. And I think I adjusted my language and my accent to kind of show that. So it really made me think, we've talked before on the podcast about code switching, and your accent does this too. Your accent changes depending on the situation. And so we can't let your accent define your language ability because it will vary, right? For various scenarios. And finally, my third big gripe with accent. Accent is different to pronunciation, right? Accent is not correct or incorrect. It's simply a way of speaking a language that links to everything you've experienced, every other language you know, where you're from, where you are. It is, as we said, your linguistic DNA. So accent is something that you can't help, really. Pronunciation, however, this is what will help you to be understood by saying the correct words in an accurate way. Accent is simply a little flair on top of that, right? That's how I think about this distinction. So when I work with my clients, we do not work on accent improvement. Like I said, I want people to be proud of the accent they have. You can, of course, listen to stuff and try and shadow and imitate and, change the way that you speak in a different language. I'm not saying, okay, and we're all going to sound like we're native English speakers. Hola, me llamo, blah, 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 un baguette s'il vous plaît. Obviously, that's not what I'm saying, right? But I'm not going to work on accent improvement because I want this to be something that is personal, like a fingerprint, right? This is your linguistic DNA. It's your fingerprint of how you speak this language. So we can't really do that kind of work, but we can work on pronunciation. And so I share my two-step process for pronunciation with my clients. This bit is the bit that actually makes a difference, and it is dead simple. This is like so easy, it's almost criminal. First thing, become familiar with the sounds. Second step, start producing the sounds. That's it, right? But how do we do this? Of course, this is the detail. So become familiar with the sounds. We can do this with someone or we can do this on your own. So when you're with someone, maybe this looks like writing a list of 5 similar sounding words on each line, asking them to read one from each line at random and see if you can identify which is which, right? For me, with my Chinese, this would be tones. This would be same word, same letters, different tone, and me figuring out which tone I'm hearing, that sort of thing. You could write a couple of similar sounding words, ask them to say 3. They can be repeated, right? And see which 3 you hear. So we can adjust that and then create your own sort of activities like this. If you're on your own, you can do this too. The pronunciation sections at the start of books or courses often have bits with similar sound focuses, particularly relating to how this might be in your native language. A as in English cat, that kind of thing. And so this can be a good way to work on pronunciation. You've probably heard me say before, I am the person that skips that section when I start a new language book because I'm like, I can't start here. This is just too heavy and tedious and boring. I need to dig in and actually learn something first. And then I kind of refer back to it. So I don't just ignore it completely. I go back to it as and when I need. YouTube is also really great if you're on your own, and the internet in general. There's just so much. Just search French pronunciation, E with an accent, right? And see what comes up. E with an acute accent, E with a grave accent. See what comes up on YouTube. Forvo is another good one with pronunciation as well. Get familiar with the IPA. So the IPA is the International Phonetic Alphabet. This can show you, and you might have seen it in maybe those pronunciation sections at the start of books or courses, right? Where it is a sort of broad phonetic system that can mostly show you how to pronounce any word in any language, more or less. And then finally, on your own, listen to audio and shadow what you hear, right? So I touched on this, right? The idea of like listening. If there's a particular accent that you do want to sound more like, you know, because you'll be going to Paris, and so it's more relevant to sound Parisian French than another variety, then listen to Parisian French and try and imitate that more so than others. But don't worry if you don't have like a perfect Parisian accent. Start producing the sounds then. So with someone, asking them to say things aloud and you repeat, that's going to be helpful there. And then reversing what I said above for becoming familiar. So like, you know, writing that list of the similar sounding words, we can do it the other way around. You speak first, see if they can guess what it is that you wanted to say. And then you know that you're doing it right. You can do this on your own as well with a tool like Google Translate or the microphone sort of dictate button on your phone to see if you're saying things well enough to be understood by the tech. Because if the tech can understand you, then chances are humans will, right? As you start producing the sounds as well on your own, you can begin to spot the patterns that are causing you trouble and then practice saying them aloud together. So for example, in Hindi, you have those breathed and unbreathed letters like a k, 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 right? Just try kind of putting them together and hearing the distinctions between similar sounds that cause you a bit of trouble. And on that note, I really like the idea of creating a bit of a simple chain of a few of those tricky sounds at a time. So maybe it's k, 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 g, 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 k, 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 g, 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 right? And then repeat them throughout your day at various little moments. You're kind of using this almost like you would sing a line from a song. We're going to sing a few letters from an alphabet, right? When you're waiting for the kettle to boil, when you're on the toilet, when you're out walking, whatever it might be, just it comes to you and you sort of sing along with the sounds. And then, of course, record your progress on your phone and then set a habit to do that consistently so that you can be improving your pronunciation. Because that's the thing that we want to focus on. Accent does not define your language ability, but pronunciation, that can be a part of it. All right then, if you want to learn what really makes language learning quick and easy, which is, drumroll, learning how to learn languages, yes, really, it's not as hard as it sounds and it works for any language, then I have your next step. I have a free video training for you called How to Finally Learn That Language, and you can get it right now, lindsaydoeslanguages.com/free. Enjoy. Thank you so much for listening to How to Learn a Language. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you're ready to take your language learning to the next level and speak with confidence without the pressure or perfectionism, then check out Language Life. You can find out all the details and join at lindsaydoeslanguages.com/LL. And if you want the first free step today, head to lindsaydoeslanguages.com/free video to get started with a fresh way to learn languages. Until next time, stay fearless, stay curious, so you can learn languages your way.